Good morning. It is super early here in California. Oh, that is really blurry. Sorry about that. Let's see if we can fix that a little bit. A little better. Maybe when we turn the lights up a little more. Here we go. Does that help? Anyway, like I told a lot of people, I don't really expect that many to attend live, but I kind of felt like I needed to do this live. For one reason, because it is my birthday, and that's kind of a big deal when you have your birthday on a new moon of this level. Um, when I say a new moon of this level, um, I think everybody can agree that we've had a lot of craziness out in the world and a lot that is still brewing. And the most intense stuff that's been happening, in my view, is internally in everybody. And it really started around COVID, and it's still happening. Um, Scorpio is about death and rebirth. New moons are about setting intentions. So, death and rebirth is really transformation, personal transformation. It's letting one part of you die so that another part of you can emerge, can be born. And when you set your intentions for transformation on a Scorpio new moon, um, within a couple days before or after, it's like planting a seed in very fertile soil. And so this is an opportunity to kind of direct your personal transformation with intention and to get to a place where something really dramatic can change in your life. And as a healer, I'm kind of always doing this stuff. So I get really excited when the whole universe is kind of backing us up. Um, Now my cats are kind of going crazy this morning. Little more activity than usual at now 6 a.m. my time. So what you want to do is think about what kind of transformation you need right now. And here's a good way to start with that. Start with what's giving you the most emotional turmoil. Out of all issues in your life, what's the one that bothers you the most? And if you could just feel that issue, feel um, that emotion, like what does it actually feel like? What does it feel like in your body on the physical, purely physical level? And if you could transform that, what would that look like? So I'm going to go to a kind of primal negative emotion being fear, because fear is really behind a lot of other negative emotions. One could argue all negative emotions. Um, Fear is kind of like a primary color of emotions in that way, and love would be another, and maybe there are only two. But anyway, for example, jealousy, isn't that just fear of loss? Um, Hatred, isn't that just fear turned into anger? Um, isn't hatred a little bit different than anger? Right? Anger is more active, hatred is more simmering. Um, so anyway, I'm going to use fear as the emotion to clear. Um, because if we can clear fear, a lot of the other more negative emotions don't have much of a chance. And if you have any questions and you're here live, and I see we have 4 people live, thank you for being here so early. I know on the East Coast it's 9 a.m., so not that early, but here in LA, it's dark outside. So, now we have an interesting thing, and I'm going to be looking at the chart. Here's one thing that's really interesting. The the new moon, which is the sun and the moon together, is trining Saturn. Okay, a trine is a 120 degrees, and it's considered an easy aspect. So there's a flow. And so what that means is that although this is a very transformative new moon, it's also something where um, there is a grounding, there is a stability on offer here. Okay, because Saturn is trine the new moon, one thing is that we can change things on a more material level. Another thing is that we can change things that are kind of stuck uptight energies um, more easily than would normally be possible. Saturn is kind of like represents structure. It can represent the matrix. It can represent government and bureaucracy and big business and all of these things that um, rule the world on that physical level. And so, with Saturn trine the new moon right now, it means that Saturn's actually helping this transformation. And when Saturn is helping a transformation, it's like starting something that having a transformation that can stick, that can hold, that can be materialized, that can be a real transformation. So, um, whereas if it were something else, other signs are less grounded. So when we have a transformation, a lot of times, like for example with psychedelics, we have a big revelation and then it's gone like a fart in the wind. Okay, because the revelation doesn't really stick, it's just a thought, and the thought is fleeting, and after a while it's not really there, you forget it. Whereas with Saturn, it's something more material, more substantial. Okay, so if you feel like, again, I'm using fear as the thing to for us to be clearing in terms of emotions, and that if we can clear a certain level of fear, then we're going to be freer to explore and manifest. See, to the degree that you have fear while you're trying to manifest, the fear becomes kind of a lens through which the manifestation happens, right? So if you say, um, I want to manifest a new relationship, but you have a lot of fear while you're doing that, then you might manifest a new relationship where you're always afraid that the person doesn't like you, they're going to leave you, and whatever. So if we can clear the fear out of the manifestation process, then we can manifest something that is more substantive, that is more something we can build on. If we throw fear into our ingredients in terms of manifestation, right? Like I'm imagining an amazing relationship and I'm intending all this great stuff, but as I'm doing it, I'm imbuing all that energy with my fears of what if it doesn't work or what if it goes bad or whatever. That colors the manifestation. If we could take that fear out, then it's going to clean up that manifestation and make it less of a fear-based thing. Okay. So for this Scorpio new moon, what we want to do as one thing is we want to release fear from our transformation and manifestation processes. Okay. So, like usual, a lot of this stuff just comes to me as I'm talking, and I realize, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay. So, so that's what I'm seeing right now. That Saturn is kind of like the dad energy. I mean, it can also be the dictatorship type government, but on the good side, it could be the dad. And since it's trine to this new moon, um, it's friendlier, it's more supportive of what we're doing. So here's what I'd like you to do first is feel the main place in your body that you feel fear. So now you might call it worry, you might call it being concerned about something. Okay, so we're doing very broad brush. I want you to locate your fear in your body because we want to transform it. And we want to transform it because this is going to help us manifest more solidly because we're not throwing fear into the middle of the manifestation. That makes sense? So, where do you feel fear in your body? And a good way to look at it is through the chakra system. So it would be the midline of the body. Do you feel fear by the tailbone, in the pelvic area, in the solar plexus, in the heart, the throat, the third eye up here? Probably not. Most people feel the fear either in the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra, or the throat chakra. So I want you to feel where you feel it. Now, you can feel it anywhere. Um, Fear can feel like a whole body sensation or whatever. But realize to the degree that the fear is released, um, then we can manifest more clearly and just have a better life in general, of course. Okay. So if you locate your fear, let's say that you feel fear in the throat. Fear in the throat a lot of times comes down to I'm afraid to speak up because I fear that I will be punished and or rejected. If you feel your fear in your throat, there's probably a fear of speaking up. And that's something to get rid of because you probably do speak, even if you do have a fear of speaking up, you probably speak sometimes. And you don't need to have that fear in the background, or you don't need to have that fear kind of woven into your communications. So, what you want to do is you want to feel how the fear feels in your throat, and then you want to intensify it on a physical level. Feel it more, let it be there. Learn to let the fear be there without pushing it down, without thinking it has to be cleared. Just let it sit there and speak anyway. If the fear is in your heart, it's probably around your own self love, love with others, connection to people. And so that can also be another kind of fear of rejection. And a lot of times the heart and the throat are very linked. The fear of losing a loved one because I spoke up. Um, and if the fear is in the solar plexus, that is a lot of fear of taking action, um, fear of maybe even expressing your anger, um, and being stuck in inaction due to fear. So let's say we want to clear our fears away today to whatever degree we possibly can in order to have a totally new reality. Because the fact is, fear is one of those gates to spiritual growth. Fear is one of those passageways. It's like a test. You cannot take fear past a certain level in your ascension process. If you're if you're carrying fear with you, there's a limit. For example, let's say if you started astral projecting, you start projecting out of your body. Not something that I've done, not something I've put a lot of effort into trying to do. But let's say, years of meditation and trying to astrally project. And then you get out of your body and all of a sudden you're terrified you're going to pop right back into your body. No more astral projection today. Kitties, do not mess with that because there is a messy kitchen behind it. I will be honest. Um, so the fear is something getting in the way of the manifestation. So I want you to just tune in for a second and feel whatever residual fear is in your body. Be brave, because to the degree that you can feel it right now, it can be transformed. So just feel what that fear feels like and then give it some love. Literally love your fear. And just take a moment to do that. You can even say to yourself, when you feel that fear, just say, I love you to the fear. And realize that your fear is the symptom of your disconnection from spirit. Spirit doesn't have fear. Sorry, I had to move the cat away from there. Spirit doesn't have fear. And you can't really get close to spirit with fear. Um, you certainly can't embody it with a lot of fear. And if you did, what would happen would be that it would actually make the fear bigger because it's trying to expel it. It's kind of like if you pour clean water into the bucket of dirty water, you're going to have dirty water leaving the bucket. And so, sorry, kitty management. Uh, so anyway, um, the as if you were filled with spirit all of the sudden, I mean, it might be total bliss. But at some point, if you were to maintain that feeling, it would start flushing out all of the incompatible feelings from your system, primarily fear. Okay, so the master key to what stops your spiritual growth is fear. And we can use this Scorpio new moon today that was just exact like 20 minutes ago or something. Um like a half an hour ago. We can use that for reaching a new level of spirituality without fear. And here's one thing interesting going on with it. So we have Mercury, the planet of communication, trining Neptune and trining Mars. So we have a grand trine. We have a big triangle in the chart. And so, again, trines are easy aspects. So we have Mercury, communication, Neptune, spirituality, Mars, confidence and action. Okay, so think about that we now can communicate our spirituality with confidence, that we can express our divine love and go into action. Okay, so we have Mercury, communication, Neptune, spirituality. Some people call Neptune the higher octave of Venus. So Venus would be like romantic love, Neptune would be more spiritual love. And then we have Mars that's energizing, but those three are all in cooperation now. Um, Now we also have something much more difficult going on, and you could definitely impact the upcoming election. Okay, we have a Pluto Mars opposition. So Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. It's death and rebirth. It's deep, deep transformation. And Mars is warlike action, it's confidence. But Mars is the aggressive energy. It's highly active energy. So you have Mars and Pluto opposed. So that means Pluto's changing Mars, Mars is changing Pluto. So that could be, to be honest, a kind of dangerous thing in terms of world politics. Like everybody's going through it. There are a lot of conflicts in the world. And Pluto, kind of rules things like plutonium, if you get what I mean. So these are some tricky times out there in the world. Personally, though, this is a time where you can either energize your personal transformation, your personal death and rebirth cycle. It can be very energized. Or if you resist it, it can come and beat you on the head trying to get your attention, one way or the other. By the way, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. I would love it if you would. And hit that bell icon to be notified when these types of things happen in the future. I'll probably do more of them, and hopefully they won't all be at 6 a.m. my time, even though I'm usually awake by that time. But when I have to wake up at 6 a.m., it's a problem. But when I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m., I wake up at 4 a.m. So whatever that means. Anyway, so I choose to take the positive aspect of this Mars Pluto, um, because Mars Pluto literally, you know, could mean nuclear war, or it could mean massive internal transformation. I choose to use the internal transformation since I'm not in charge of nuclear wars. Um, but just so you know, the energies are intense out there. Expect some drama in the world after this new moon because, again, Scorpio is like Pluto, its ruler. It's about death and rebirth. Also, since Pluto got demoted from being a planet, for Mars kind of came back. Mars was the old ruler of Scorpio before Pluto was discovered. I still consider Pluto the ruler of Scorpio, whether it's a planet or non-planet or whatever. But Mars kind of has a bigger impact than it did because of this. Anyway, the thing is, we have both of the rulers of Scorpio opposed to each other at this time of the Scorpio new moon. To me, that means that we're kind of upgrading the whole Scorpio thing on my birthday. Yay. Um, so we're upgrading the whole Scorpio thing. And what does that mean? Well, as we release fear, and I would like you to consider making that a primary intention for this new moon. Remember, new moons are about setting intentions that are aligned with the energy of the sign. And if you know astrology and you know what house it's happening in your chart, that's another layer of it, but we can't go over that here. Um, so Scorpio's about death and rebirth. It's about deep transformation. It's about intensity. It's about sexuality. Okay. It's about a lot of things because all the signs are 1/12 of infinity. So a lot goes in 1/12 of infinity. Um, but anyway, with Neptune, with Pluto and Mars opposed to each other, my argument is that, and with Saturn trine this new moon, my argument is that we're being supported in upgrading. The camera I'm looking at is reversed, so like I'm looking for the wrong side here. um so we're upgrading this whole death and rebirth cycle. Now, the best way to upgrade the death and rebirth cycle seems kind of clear to me, would be to eliminate fear from the cycle. And I just got that now. It's like, oh, that's kind of obvious. Why didn't I think of that before? But whatever. That's what intuition is for. So if we think of There is a death and rebirth cycle. Everybody has a death and rebirth cycle. Everything, the nature, right? It has fall, goes into winter, and then we got the rebirth in the spring. Right now, in the northern hemisphere, we're in that fall going into winter mode. Not in LA though, 80 degrees. But anyway, um, but think of it as that most of us really fear change, especially change that's kind of imposed on us from the outside. We fear it, we resist it. But imagine if we kind of aligned with it. And especially if you are a Scorpio or have a lot of Scorpio or Pluto or Mars prominent in your chart, might be a bigger deal for you. So we are upgrading the death and rebirth cycle of Scorpio. And what we're doing when we do that is we are allowing the universe to have our back. It's like instead of sailing against the wind, now we're turning the boat around and sailing with the wind and letting the wind make it a lot easier to sail. Um, you know, I had a client a few years ago in past life regression, and he went to a future life, way in the future. It was pretty sci-fi. Um, and he goes to nearby Jupiter. I mean, obviously, you can't land on Jupiter because it's a gas giant and nothing to land on. But anyway, so he goes very close to Jupiter, where he's getting the energy of Jupiter. And the energy of Jupiter was the energy of Jupiter is positive, it's expansive, it's optimistic. And so he was describing getting the download from being by Jupiter. And he said, it gives you that feeling that the universe absolutely has your back. Now, we're going into a turbulent time, in my opinion, in world politics, in terms of in national politics, the election coming up. There's going to be chaos, one way or another. There's going to be chaos because the system is changing and people are ascending. And so the negativity is rising to the surface to be cleansed. And the key thing that you can do is not go into fear. If you go into fear, you're going to get the negative side of the story. You're going to live the negative side of the story. And that goes with all things. If you get fired from a job and you totally go into fear, you're going to have a very different experience than if you say, wow, the universe is redirecting me to another job, right? I wonder what that is. And then let's say you would go into excitement. Um, so if you go into excitement in this period of transformation, then you're going to manifest a better reality because excitement is a far higher frequency than fear. In fact, it's even the opposite side, the opposite end of the continuum, right? So think of it this way. The world is going to go through some crazy shit pretty soon. The United States is going to go through some crazy shit pretty soon. The end result of the craziness is positive. And there will be a lot of things out there that could make us go into fear. There's going to be stuff that could be interpreted as scary. But what if you decided not to be scared? What if you decided to be excited rather than scared about the upcoming transformations, no matter how scary they appear? By doing that, the new reality can come through with much less drama. There's gonna be some drama. People are dramatic and world events are gonna happen, and they're not all going to be fun. There's a lot of crap out there. I mean, imagine if we are moving into a world of love. Imagine that. Imagine that all of the utopian ideas that people have been reaching for so long actually happened. It's a world of everybody loves each other, everybody has each other's back. It's heaven on earth. Well, how would we get to heaven on earth? We would have to clear all this fear, all this distrust, all this anger, all this crap. And things are going to happen to help us do that. And the only way you can do that is to actually see it, see what needs to be cleared. You can't clean the dirt if you can't see the dirt or you can't detect it through something, right? You need to know where the dirt is, what it looks like, where it's hiding. And that goes the same for all the corruption of all the systems. Okay. Now, so this Scorpio new moon, forgetting about world events now on a personal level, what transformations are you going through that you fear? You want to feel like the universe is trying to get you to transform. The universe is trying to get you to upgrade. It might be doing that by showing you that sometimes you're a pissed off asshole and everybody's mad at you for being that way. So it might not feel like glorious ascension when the universe is shoving your nose into your asshole quality, right? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when everybody out there all of a sudden agrees they don't like you or something. Or, all your karma comes back at you. But that's not only with being the asshole, that's also with being the pushover. What if you're the type of person that kind of has very little will and you don't really know what you want in life? You kind of get pushed around by everybody else. Well, then that will probably increase until you get so pissed off that you're like, I'm not going to take this anymore. And then it will shift, right? And what would keep it from shifting is the fear. So we're talking about removing fear from the death and rebirth cycle of Pluto, of Scorpio, and aligning ourselves with the process of transformation. On this Scorpio new moon, where we set intentions for the future, the intention for today, as I put it together, is just exactly that, that we are removing fear from the death and rebirth cycle of Scorpio. So let's go first to the death part of death and rebirth. One thing that always amazed me, and especially now that I do past life regression hypnosis, um, is people that are super religious, that absolutely believe that they're going to heaven, but that have a real fear of death. Isn't that weird? Like, if you're 95 years old and you're on your deathbed and you believe in heaven, you believe you're going to be hanging with Jesus when you die and whatever, it's going to be glorious. Wouldn't you be kind of eager to get there? I mean, not that you'd make it happen yourself, but wouldn't you be a little bit eager to be in heaven instead of being on this shitty deathbed on earth? But isn't it wild that people aren't? So when you have a fear of the death and rebirth cycle, what you're really saying kind of is that there is only death and there is no rebirth. If you have a fear of death, then you probably don't believe in rebirth. You don't trust that rebirth actually exists. So you think all it is death. Now, in your own personal transformation, for example, if you're going through a divorce or a breakup of some sort, that also feels like a death. And you also may feel that there's going to be no rebirth. I don't see any rebirth on the horizon here. It's just all death. Okay. And any transformation, somebody else's death, the potential of your death, whatever, any transformation can bring up this primal fear, especially a transformation that involves loss. So, what I'm getting right now is that we really need to focus on allowing the death part of the death and rebirth cycle so that we get to the rebirth in a cleaner way. So, I want you to look at yourself right now and set an intention in terms of get a vision for what the rebirth would look like. Your personal rebirth after getting rid of fear. What would that look like to you? What would it look like to shed this layer of fear, worry, doubt, not trusting the universe to have your back, to shed all of that? What would it look like? What would you look like? How would you be different? I want you to try to get a vision of that. And so I'm not going to do a whole meditation on here and just have you looking at a screen of me meditating. Um, but I am going to just do a little 1 minute energy thing for anybody watching now or later. It should work on anybody. And that is just a little reorientation from, like I was saying, so that we align with letting go in this death and rebirth process and trusting that there will be a rebirth. Okay. So just a little 1 minute meditation. I want you to just sit in your heart and feel the trust or lack of trust. So a good thing to say would be, kind of like a mantra. I embrace the death and rebirth cycle of my own personal transformation. I embrace the death and rebirth cycle of my own personal transformation. And also, I embrace the death and rebirth cycle of the transformation going on in the world. Things are going to happen that you are not going to want to embrace. Me neither. That's okay. You don't have to embrace the things that are happening. You want to embrace the actual cycle, the death and rebirth cycle. It doesn't mean you like it that things are going on in a certain war or whatever, that horrible things go down. Doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you acquiesce to it. It means that you see the cycle, right? It means that you embrace the cycle. You might not like losing grandma, but it might be better than grandma getting more and more decrepit and refusing to die for 50 more years, right? So the cycle of death and rebirth, yeah, when you look at it on a micro level of grandma or me or my relationship or whatever it is, I don't want to lose my relationship. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose what I have, of course. But the cycle itself, these cats are going berserk. They don't like this thing back here. It's the enemy. Um, so if you can embrace the cycle of death and rebirth and take fear out of it as much as possible, then you're going to move more smoothly through your own personal transformations and the global transformations that are occurring. So, how to do that? So, let me give you a little meditation that you can use. Number one, make an intention. And you can make your own intention. Here's one I'll give you. I embrace the life, the death and rebirth cycle of my own personal transformation. I embrace it. Okay. So feel that and feel that level of surrender to the process. And then notice any fears that come up into your body. Notice where they are physically and notice how those fears feel on a physical level. Remember, all emotions are physical sensations. If you really tune into it, all emotions are physical sensations. And if you could hit the like button, I'd really appreciate that. Please. All emotions are physical sensations. When they are so-called negative emotions like fear that we're dealing with today, I want you to feel them in your body instead of resisting them. Feel them in your body and actually, like for example, let's say fear feels like heaviness on my heart. Then what I want you to do is sit and relax and feel heaviness in your heart and even push on your heart and make it heavier. And then relax and surrender and realize that you are able to feel heaviness in your heart. It's not dangerous. It's not bad. It's not this hugely terrible thing. Feel the heaviness in your heart. It's okay. And then you will notice it's almost like when you scuba dive and you go in an airplane and you blow your nose like that to adjust, to equalize the pressure for your ears, right? When you feel the pain of your emotion, of your fear, you feel the physical sensation and you increase it on purpose, it actually starts dissipating. When when clients of mine say an emotion that they want to clear, like, I'm so nervous, and I say, be more nervous. The number one most common reaction is laughter. Doesn't sound nervous. That laughter kind of knows what I'm talking about, doesn't it? So when you feel the emotion that you've been resisting and you feel it on purpose and you even exaggerate it, but then you relax and ask for more, it transforms dramatically. Scorpio is a water sign. Water is about emotion. So any huge death and rebirth transformation of Scorpio is probably going to involve some emotions. If fear is not the one for you today, well, first of all, I'd like you to reconsider and think fear is a master negative emotion. So all the negative emotions are fear in essence. They're just a different shade of fear. Um, so you have some, I'm sure you do, right? If you can allow those emotions to be there, feel them on a physical level, even feel them more on a physical level, you will have a shift. Every time you feel emotional distress, if you ask for more emotional distress, sounds crazy, doesn't it? It's not. You will actually find that you have cleared a huge chunk of that pattern. Sometimes in seconds, you can clear huge emotional issues just by deciding to feel the feeling. Okay. So it's really funny because I've kind of gone in a big loop here today around this Scorpio new moon. And so what we've come up with is that we want to take fear out of the death and rebirth cycle. And so most people aren't that afraid of the rebirth. They're only afraid the rebirth is never going to happen. So really, it's the fear of the death part of the death and rebirth cycle. and not having faith that there will be a rebirth. And how are we solving this and creating a new reality? By embracing the fear, by allowing the fear to move so that it clears, not by trying to expel fear as this bad, scary thing. Okay? So for this Scorpio new moon, which happened about an hour ago, exact, but for the next 48 hours, what I'm going to do, and I'd recommend for you to do, is meditate and feel your fear of the death and rebirth cycle, feel it more, and let that fear be expressed and let it go, and realize that the universe has your back in transforming your relationship with the death and rebirth cycle. To the degree that you become more spiritually aware, you will enjoy the death and rebirth cycle. You will not resist any part of the cycle. And so that's really important. Thanks for the new like. Um, I didn't expect, a huge crowd here, so I'm happy with how many people have been watching. Absolutely. And for those of you who watch afterwards, thanks for doing that. And please send me comments on how it goes to do this work. If you've been noticing in the last few years, you have been going through personal transformation. Whether you've been a part of it consciously or whether it's just been kicking your ass, doesn't matter. You've been part of it. If you have been resisting the transformation going on within you and the world, then you've probably gone through some suffering. And so here's the way to get out of the suffering: removing the fear from the death and rebirth cycle. That's how we get rid of the suffering. That we embrace this death and rebirth cycle of Scorpio. We embrace it into our lives. We embrace the fear that comes up so that it can be processed. Your body knows how to do that. The best thing is to not go on a big mental thing about it, but feel it in your body. Feel it physically. Feel what it feels like to be afraid of death and rebirth and transformation in general. Feel what is your lifelong process of resisting death and rebirth. We all have one. And in your meditations, and you can always reach out to me for a session if you want at andysway.com. But in your meditations in the next couple of days, feel that fear of change, feel that fear of loss, and tell that fear that you love it and that it's allowed to be there. And it's a funny thing because when you tell fear it's allowed to be there, it usually leaves. But when you tell fear that it's not allowed to leave, it usually stays. And that just seems to be the way things work. So anyway, for this Scorpio new moon, for the intentions that you set, which are allowed to be totally different than what we've been talking about, if they are, and you have other intentions for transformation, I would encourage you to use this as kind of a basis for those others. Um, I want you to think about that you are waking up spiritually. You are waking up to who you really are. Okay, if there is reincarnation, you are not the current identity that you think you are. You're much bigger than that. And so imagine you're waking up to being that. And imagine that as you wake up to being the soul that you actually are, the eternal being that you actually are, the ego might not like it. It might feel like death. So the whole spiritual journey is really the death of the ego to be reborn as spirit. The funny thing is, though, you were spirit the whole time. And the ego doesn't ever totally go away, because when somebody calls your name, you got to know they're calling you. I mean, it doesn't go totally away. It's your avatar for being a human on earth. It's fine. But the center of the identity shifts from ego to spirit. And when that happens, you're at a new level. So all fear, in a way, is fear of that. It's fear of the death of the ego going into rebirth as spirit. And that's the process that we are all in right now. And so by moving through your fears, by allowing the death and rebirth cycle, by even allowing your fears through the death and rebirth cycle, you get the wind of the universe at your back so that you can move from ego to spirit, which is your true identity. Thank you so much for being here today. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any friends that might need this message, send it along to them. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.